Hello once again, world, and welcome to episode 9 of The Top Split. I'm your host, Alex McKellar, and today I'm really pleased to say that my guest was none other than Benny Simonsen. Once again, I failed to ask my guest the correct pronunciation of his name, and I guess Benny was too polite to correct me, so forgive me, Benny. I'll endeavour to get it right from now on. And forgive me, folks at home, I get it wrong during our chat, but I'll do better from here on out, I promise. Some of you may know Benny from the iRacing servers, where he's addicted to the skippies like so many of us. What you may or may not know is that in addition to being great in that car, Benny is a successful race driver in the real world of GT and endurance racing as well. If you like driving the new Ferrari 488 on iRacing, imagine taking that bad boy for a few laps on one of those tracks that we drive virtually in real life. And not only that, racing and winning. Wouldn't that just be incredible? Well, Benny is doing all that and more. Born in Denmark, Benny now lives in England and gets to spend his time in different parts of the world racing GT3 cars. Something that folks like me can only dream about. But for today, Benny was gracious enough to join me here at the Top Split, and I very much enjoyed our conversation. So without further delays, I give you Mr. Benny Simonsen. So first off, today I'd like to welcome Mr. Benny Simonsen to the Top Split. Benny, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you very much for having me. Been looking forward to it. It's been a long time of planning, but we're here.
Yeah, we finally managed to sort ourselves out for a chat. I think I took you away for a bit of a PUBG game. Have you been playing that a bit lately? Seems like a good game.
I only just only installed it a few days ago, so yeah. I'm not very good.
No, I'm not very good at it either.
No, it's just a bit, sometimes you just, I think iRacing and stuff like that is, it's not, I don't know, you're not fully relaxing to play. Sometimes your brain just want to switch off for like 20 minutes. I think it's quite good fun just to run around and shoot some people.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's a really good concept for a game. But, and I agree, it does give you a bit of a relaxing break from things. But
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, on the other day on the RRTV broadcast at the Interlagos round, I said I'd been after we'd finished interviewing. I said I'd been wanting to have you on the show since there was another round of the Monday Night Lights you competed nearly 2 seasons ago at the New Hampshire Roval.
That's it.
Yeah, and in that race you had a bit of a coming together with Enzo. Cantor at the time. And at the time, I thought it'd be really interesting to get your insight and comparison into, the comparison between the real and online worlds of racing. And I wanted you to, amongst other things, further my listeners and my own understanding both of what it's like having the opportunity to race real tracks around the world as well as our iRacing experience and how they stack up, sort of thing. So first of all, I mean, from what I can tell, you've collected quite a set of on-track experiences in some really cool cars, not the least of which is the amazing Ferrari 488. Benny, can you tell me what's it like to drive a car like that around a racetrack?
It's a super cool experience. It's I've been very lucky and fortunate in my career to drive some cool things. And the team I drive for, we actually had the first ever 488 built. So we gave it the world debut for it for the Melbourne GP last year. So that was a pretty cool experience. But yeah, I mean, these cars they're so unique and stunning equipment that it was a life dream for me to race cars and to get there and get to drive these cars. Yeah, a very, very cool experience.
Yeah, I bet. Like someone like me, I've done no track time beyond, the local indoor karting place. And I've often wondered, how hard is it to push a car like that, be it a low end or a high end car, to its limits on a track like that? How hard is that to push yourself to do?
I mean, for, nowadays, the modern cars, especially in the GT3 category, which I'm racing in, is, we have traction control, we have ABS, and I say 80% of all GT3 racing is what we call Pro-Am. So you have to have one amateur on the teams most of the time in endurance races. Mm-hmm. So they're fairly built to being a little bit amateur friendly in a way. I mean, it's not the car you just come off the road and drive. No way. No. And when we say an amateur driver, these guys are still highly skilled drivers. Sure. They just don't do it as a full-time professional. I think as a pro, most pros, it's probably be within a second and a half of each other. It's the mastering and pulling that last second out of the car. That's where it gets really tricky, and really to drive them under limit. But I don't know, ABS and traction control does help you, but obviously we try not to run with it to the full thing, because it will slow you down a little bit. But in between a little bit, I'll say.
Yeah, I suppose there's a limiter that you don't want to that you don't want to go beyond. But is that a hard? Like I know I find it just in iRacing. I find myself, a metre or two from the extent of the track, and probably getting on the gas a little bit too late to get there. For me, I find it's kind of a mental thing. Do you find that in the same way when you've got those physical elements in the race car as well?
I think actually you feel it a bit more in a race car, but like, as you say, finding the limit on the track and stuff. And on those things, you just have to give 110% every single lap, because, nowadays it's big grids, and there's always one, 2 or 3 guys who's pushing to the limit. So everybody ends up pushing, you are giving 110% every single lap. And it's a tough sport. If you don't perform, there's another 500,000 hungry drivers out there without a drive who's hungry to get your seat. So there's no time to relax anymore. You get measured in every single lap, especially in endurance racing. It's the average of your lap time, and with a stint, they not always look for who's been putting the fastest lap in, but it's also who deals with traffic best. So I mean, but I mean nowadays, 12 hours, 24-hour races, they are just sprint races now, really. It is full attack pretty much from the beginning. Yeah,
that's really interesting. And I know watching the Bathurst race around here, it seems like every year they've been just describing them as big sprint races. But from what I can tell, though, speaking of that, your driving has led you to travel a bit too, and most notably, in my mind, to my homeland of Australia and the great Mount Panorama circuit in Bathurst. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to travel down here and some of your experiences down under?
Yeah, I mean, it's, as you say, quite funny. I ended up doing a lot of stuff in Australia the recent years. I mean, it's for people who probably know a little bit about GT racing and followed a little bit in Australia as well. I think it's no secret that my brother raced quite a lot in Australia and was Australian champion and did the V8 supercars. So obviously he knew some people down there, and I got to know them. And I think it was in 2013. A guy called Phil Hughes, who runs a Ferrari workshop in Melbourne. Who's a friend of mine and a friend of my brother's. He knew of a guy who potentially needed somebody for Bathurst for it was a 2014 race. And they basically said, there's no seat going at the moment, maybe not, but come down to Phillip Island, we give you 10 laps, see what you got. So
nice.
I booked myself a one-way ticket and went down, did 10 laps, and they said, I'll have another 10. And then I did another 10, I had another 20. And then it turned out to getting the seat and drive a Vicious Rumour racing team there. And then I've been with them ever since. So we've done Bathurst now a few times, and we've done the Melbourne GP a couple of times and a bit of Australian GT here and there. So, that's how it kind of blend into it.
Gee, that's awesome, mate. That's a lot of commitment. A one-way ticket to hop on a plane to the other side of the world for 10 laps, man. That's awesome. Must have been pretty confident.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, as I said earlier, it's, you know, I wanted to race my entire life, and people who has done a little bit of racing or tried to, they know how incredibly hard and a tough game it is, you know. So if anybody gives you a shot, you know, go for it. Take it with anything. So I'm, you know, I thought, 10 laps, it's not a lot, but hey, it's a shot you're going to take if you, so awesome. One thing leads to the other.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic, mate. Now, I noted that the pole award for the 12-hour race at Bathurst that you, as you said, yourself have driven a couple of times is named after your brother. I think, you know, as you were talking about it, it goes to show the high regard that he's held in after having quite a bit of success down here. And, you know, was that part of the reason, you know, his experiences down here, was that part of coming down here? Was it just that opportunity?
I mean, it was an opportunity. Obviously, I love to go in his footsteps. You know, he had an amazing career, and as you said, I would love to get my hands on that trophy one day. But no, it wasn't. Say it wasn't going. I was choosing Australia. It was. You know, you just got to go where you get the opportunities, and then you know, there was a few mutual friends. Then an opportunity came up, and went for it. You know, it could have been a person in America, could have been one in Japan, but it just turned out that somebody was happy to give me a shot on that given day in Australia. Yeah, that's great. And went from there. Yeah,
I'm glad it was down here, mate, because we got a lot to offer down here. A lot of fun, right?
I love Australia. It's my favorite place in the world, and I go there now. I mean, I think we tried to plan it, as you said, 2 seasons ago to have this thing, and I think it was a trip to Australia actually that stopped me from doing it. But I go out about 3 months a year now, every year, and love it there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, I watched that lap that your brother did, which held the lap record for quite some time, and it had a video on YouTube from an in-car perspective, and whilst it looked like quite a wild ride externally, I mean, he looks so in control of everything at the same time, and I wondered, as someone yourself who's had obviously a lot of Bathurst experience, is that what it's like driving at Bathurst? Is it sort of focused and calm and yet sort of chaotic at the same time?
I don't know if it's calm. I always think when you watch an onboard video on YouTube, it never justifies how quick it actually is. Bathurst is incredible hard. I'm not going to lie. It's one of the toughest tracks in the world, and you basically just hold on top of the mountain and going down. But yeah, it looks calm and easy a little bit when you watch the lap, but it is not. But yeah, you know, as you probably know a little bit with iRacing, you don't want the cars to step out. The moment you start sliding a little bit, you lose time. So you know you need to keep it neat and tidy as well, especially around Bathurst, because there is no room for mistake. I mean, it's a really, really hard track to put a lap together.
Yeah, no, I could imagine. It's just kind of how I'm picturing it. Really hard work, but really exciting. And I know, like you say, you can't make a mistake. And I put it in iRacing terms, and I think about my racing there, and I think, looking through my results, it's either, you know, a really clean race, no incident points, or it's like 2 incident points and you put it in the wall and binned it sort of thing. So, you know, is that kind of the sentiment you're going in there? One mistake and you're gone?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's I mean, yeah, okay. At the bottom of the mountain, there's room for a little bit of mistake, but on top of the mountain, if you touch the wall, it's game over. And especially, you know, with 12 hours, it's a team game as well. It's not just you. It's not a sprint race. It's the whole team effort's gone if you go in. Yeah. And also on the other side, as I said, it's a Pro-Am category, so not alone is it your car. It's normally owned by the team or another driver in the team. Yeah. So you know it's a $1 million car. So if you put that in the wall, you're playing with a car that's worth quite a bit as well. Oh, yeah. But as I said, now nowadays you can't hold back. It's there's a lot of hungry drivers out there, so you know. You have to give 110% every single lap and hope you make it through, really. You know, you do have the odds occasionally, okay, without a race where you can be leading by 20 seconds or something. You have 15 minutes to go. You can obviously back off a little bit or, you know, playing hard. But yeah, apart from that, it's full attack, really, but hope for the best.
Yeah, that's it. Now, I'm going to guess that you know this already, or you may not. I don't know, but I saw you're listed on Wikipedia as holding the lap record at Mount Panorama in the production sports car category. It was a 2:03.419, if research serves me correct. Do you remember that lap at all?
Yeah, I do. It was the Bathurst Motor Festival in 2016.
Yep.
And we took the Ferrari 488 GT3 there.
Nice.
Yeah, I think the lab's on YouTube somewhere as well, if I remember right. But basically it's the same car we used for Bathurst. We didn't do Bathurst that year with that car, so it'd been nice to see what it could done under the 12 hours conditions, obviously with a lot more bite in the track, and obviously with the Motor Festival, it hadn't been raced on for a while, so it was quite a green track, if that makes sense. So
yeah. No, that's really interesting, but that's quite a feather in your cap, I have to say, having the lap record at Bathurst. That's going to carry some kudos in the driving ranks, I would have thought.
Yeah, it's it is a cool track, and it's one of those when you master that lap in your own satisfaction, it is a good feeling.
Yeah, I bet that does feel great too. Now, we spoke about earlier this year. We tried to hook up, but you drove it at the Formula One race meeting in the GT category again. What was that like in and around Formula One and at the Grand Prix track there?
It's a very cool experience. It's the Melbourne Grand Prix is really cool. It's a bit like driving on a stadium, really, with the way the track is around the park. Very, very cool experience. You're in there, coming down there from pit lane and all these little things does make it look cool. And especially on the race on the Sunday, we do one each day, Thursday to Sunday. I mean, the race on the Sunday with the crowd and that's obviously with the GTs we don't get that kind of numbers, but pretty cool. And unfortunately, this year wasn't lucky enough to get on the podium, but it's a cool feeling to get up on the podium. Yeah.
Now, did you get a sense of what it might be like to be part of that Formula One circus as a result of that? Or was it just more yes and no?
I always, it's a big circus traveling around. They do a lot of races each year. I mean, one way I can see it's a very, very cool experience to be part of. But, I can also half in a way, I can see somebody like Rosberg, he's done it, he's won it. Yeah. And then,
he just
I had
away,
enough,
right? Yeah.
Walked away. I can see that a little aspect as well. If you're not in it for the long term and earn your money, if you're just there for getting that trophy, I can I can see both sides,
Yeah. Fair enough. I reckon it'll be pretty intense gig too. So, mind you, I imagine it all is, to be honest. It's a pretty tough game by the way you're describing it too. Now, do you have any plans to come back to Australia, coming back for some more GT racing, or, does the beach lifestyle appeal to you like that?
I love to live out there. No, I'm, really early days now. I don't think anything for this year, but I'm pretty confident we'll be back for Bathurst next year.
Nice.
I know there's a test happening in November, but as I said, still a few early days, so I'll probably know a bit more next month or two. Trying to work out to where to drive and so on. But I'm pretty confident to be there next year again. Yeah,
awesome. Now, I have to ask you about your experiences at Spa. So there was a big iRacing event there last week or so. That was the 24 Hours of Spa. And in my commentary of some of the Skippy races, I've mistakenly referred to you as a former category winner at Le Mans, when in actual fact it was the 24-hour race at Spa that you won. Can you let people know what that was like? I can only imagine that was an amazing experience. Yeah, that was,
looking back, that was probably the best race of my career so far. That was a really, really cool experience. I mean, for me, there's, you got four big races, I'll say, who's like Le Mans, Spa, Daytona, and Nürburgring 24. Yeah. So to get a class win in all class at Spa 24 a 2 years ago now, I mean, that was just over the moon, absolutely over the moon. And that was a bit like a dream come true, to be fair.
Yeah, I can imagine. One thing I was interested to know, you mentioned about team before. and how the unit comes together. I was curious to know whether you do get a real sense of team in an event like that, or is there still some competitiveness against with the drivers in the team against each other?
There can be at times. There can be competitive in the team. For Spa, I think we had a really good team. There was no competitives. We all worked together. We were 4 drivers, and I think we were all four very good characters in that team. Looking back and speaking with the other guys, when we meet up once in a while at the tracks, we all go back and say that was probably one of the funniest weekends we had race-wise. Not even just because we're winning, but purely on the banter in the team. Everybody got along well. It was I wouldn't say like a stag do, but it was not just the drivers, but also the mechanics. It was a funny group of guys, and there was a lot of practical jokes happening that weekend, and still taking it serious, but there was a very, very good atmosphere. It's obviously paid off on the track as well.
That's really cool to hear because, from an outsider looking in, I only see what's on television primarily. And, you look at the F1 teams and it seems like their biggest rivals are the guys on the other side of the garage. But to hear that in amongst all that would have been going on there and the tension and excitement and everything, that's really cool to hear. And I can only imagine that it probably contributed a lot to the win as well. People being so happy to be there with each other and race together. It would have been awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. No, true. As I said, I think it paid off in the end. As you said, normally the first guy you want to beat is your teammate, because he's the one in the same equipment. Yeah. But I think on that particular weekend, but I think we came in that at that weekend. We came in the favourites. Okay. Looking at the paper, I was very confident in the co-drivers I had, that we had the strongest lineup. We had a very strong team behind us. Yeah. So I think that if you can just relax and chill out and know you don't have to beat the guy next door and him for the same. If we all do perform well, we will win. So. Yeah, it was just have fun and a bit like when you race karts back in the day. It was all about just having fun and drive, and that was that weekend a bit about really. We all still pushed each other, of course, because you want to beat the guy, but it was more friends driving together that weekend. Yeah,
that's awesome, and what a fantastic outcome as well. So. Natural next thing for that from me is, did you compete in the iRacing 24-hour event? Although I imagine that would kind of pale in comparison to the real thing.
I'd love to do one of the. I haven't had a chance now yet. I'd love to do one. It's just the time. I mean, as I said earlier, with the F1 calendar, then these guys are busy. But even with the GT racing, it's very hard to find the time. To do something. I'm kind of the person. I know I don't want to just log on and done 2 laps of practice. I kind of don't want to do stuff properly. I'm a bit of a competitive person. I hate losing.
Oh, that helps, right?
Yeah. So, if there's one over the winter or something where there's a week leading up to turn a few laps in, I'd love to do one. But it's just really to find the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, from what I can tell, you've driven a swag of real life tracks, a whole heap of them that we see in iRacing, and the ones that I can think of: Bathurst, of course. I think you've driven the Circuit of the Americas, COTA. Spa and Alton Park. I'm sure I've missed a few, but there'll be no comparison, I'm sure, ultimately between the physical elements of fanging around in a high-powered race car. But the obvious question, of course, is how do the tracks compare between real life and the sim?
I think that's one of iRacing's absolutely strongest sides. Is the tracks are so close. It's funny, even when we drive around, you feel like there's little bumps in certain areas, and then you drive it on iRacing a bit later, and the bump's still there. And I mean, I think that's one of the things they're really, really strong on iRacing is the accuracy of the tracks, especially now with the newer tracks they have made over the last years. It's just getting better and better and better. I haven't played I haven't played any of the newer games on we can say in the simulator games to
Yes.
compare, but I mean from like comparing to R Factor and stuff like that before, it's mind blowing how close they are.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, jumping onto the cars for a sec, the cars themselves, I mean, the first thing that came to my mind looking at your driving history is the newly released Ferrari on iRacing, and you sort of preempted me in saying you were the first guy to ever race the real thing. But again, how does the car then compare, this new one that they've just released, to the actual thing racing around a track?
The cars are still pretty close. I mean, it's very hard to compare a little bit because I still think you don't feel the same speed difference, and you don't get that feel through like you would do in your real life through your whole body. You feel every vibration.
Yes.
And sometimes there is a little bit of a weird dynamics happen the way.
Yep.
I've been catching a slide in iRacing is a lot harder than in real life.
Oh, okay. Do you think that's because of do you think that's because of the physics, or because you can't feel it as much? Or
I think it's probably a bit of a mixture, because obviously you don't feel it as quick. You feel it through your wheel, all depending on what wheel you have.
Yeah.
But I also think sometimes when you get to a certain angle and you think, okay, yeah, it just keeps sliding away. Okay. But I also think if you made it too easy to catch the slide, the game probably get too easy as well. If that makes sense. So I think the balance is probably pretty good.
Yeah.
But as you say, compared to the cars, I mean, they are extremely close. It really surprised me how each detail they get through. Even with the 488, the sound of the gear changing, still, the way you can hear the turbo. It is very, very close. It's incredibly good for a simulator. It's a few bits and bobs still there to work on, I think. But I mean, it made me laugh. I think it was the Porsche Cup car that was released soon, and I drove one of those like the week before it was released, and just little things like you can hear the sounds when you select first gear is exactly the same. That is quite cool. They get these little things in.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. I've noticed that the turbo on the Ferrari, obviously I haven't had experience with the real thing, but I thought that was a really cool sound. But combining the two together, I've often wondered how close the lap times are. So you've got the tracks, we're saying, are really accurate. The cars are pretty good at the same time, but combine the two, are the lap times representatively or comparative between the real life and online?
I don't know if you can compare them, like saying if I can do a 205 on that, I can do a 205 on the other one. I mean, to be fair, it's a hard question for me to answer because I haven't played that much with the GT3 cars on iRacing. I was kind of like trying to make my license to go up through to the GT, and I got through the Skippy and suddenly got hooked on the racing in the Skippy. And I haven't really moved on from that one yet because I kind of find it quite funny with the battles happening.
Yeah.
But from what I have seen, it's in the same bracket. They might swing a second, 2 or 3 sometimes, but it's roughly in the same area.
Yeah.
But also again, it's, as I said earlier with Bathurst, as an example, it's you can get to one track and it could be 3 seconds slower one day, and then the next day you can have loads of grip and rubber run into it, and what tires you're on makes a big tires difference. In real life racing is like black gold.
Yeah. Okay. So, and the other thing I've always wondered about is how much of a taste we get and how useful a tool iRacing can be. Now, I don't know if you've seen the footage online, but there's a video on YouTube of the famous move that Max Verstappen made around the outside of, I think it's Blanchimont, it's called, at Spa, in his rookie season of 2015 in the F1s, right? They play an interview over the top of it, of Max, that he gave on the TV at the time after the race, and the commentator saying to him, "No one overtakes there, but you did," and it goes on. Then, after the actual footage of him in the real race, they show some footage of him in iRacing, practicing in an F1 car, racing side by side through the same section of track in what I thought, for all intents and purposes, was like a dress rehearsal for what he did in the race. Do you find that you can practice stuff here that might be transferable to the car in real life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the reasons. I mean, I love playing the simulator, but you know, it's one of the things is the practice as well. Any seat time is good time. You see people using loads of simulators in F1 and GT, LMP racing nowadays. I think it's a brilliant tool. As I said earlier, you don't feel everything through the simulators nowadays, but I mean, from purely racecraft, overtaking, understanding of reading what people do, you know, where to position yourself. I think it's an incredible tool. Also for concentration, you know, that little thing of brake there, hit the apex, turn there, do that, you know, which is what goes through your head when you're driving. You know, you're 150% concentrated on getting your markers. It's exactly the same concentration level you use when you're hot lapping or driving around here. You want to hit that apex perfect every time. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's an amazing tool to use.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, I imagine, you know, from what I can tell, the F1 teams, I don't know what it's like in the GT arena that you're in, but the F1 teams seem to have pretty amazing simulator setups. And I imagine it for them, it's to counter the fact that they get limited testing time as well. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know I don't know actually what, you know, is it purely for driver training or are they testing stuff through their simulators? I don't know. But yeah, it's, you know, it's, as I said, I think every time, you know, you're in the seat, it's good. I don't think it doesn't even, you know, it depends what you're doing, but everything helps, you know, from go-kart, simulator, Formula 4, Formula 3, GT, any seat times help you over. It's experience, you know, and especially with a sport like ours, where it's not like football, where you can go down the road and practice. You know, it's going to cost you $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 every time you out doing something. So, yeah,
it gets you out a bit cheaper than that, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's something you can just sit and do every day, isn't it?
I was just thinking the next time my wife complains that I spend too much on my iRacing, I'll just say, it's not costing me $20,000 every time I go out.
Exactly.
One thing that does interest me is and I'm interested in your take on this, because is the different approach that people take to racing. It often translates into, I guess, driving styles. Now, my previous guest, Johnny Gindy, who was on last time, who I don't think he has the same extent of experience that you do on the track, certainly, but he gave me an insight from his perspective, which I found quite interesting, and I'd love to get your opinion on it. Now, what he said was, in his experience, he found that when it came to, you know, let's call them bold moves into corners, that people racing on real tracks were he felt more likely to take bigger dives, if you like, than those on iRacing. Now, his assessment was that the drivers of the real cars who are being overtaken, the ones that are being overtaken, they knew that in the event of an accident, you know, they were either going to have to pay for the damage or make peace with the team and the team owner. And so I guess you could say he felt that they had more skin in the game, so to speak, and would be less likely to risk defending the inevitable contact that might result. Has that been your experience? Is yours kind of the same or different opinions to that?
I think it all depends who you come across.
Sure.
I think it's a little bit depends on who you come across, but I think real life racing is a bit more evil out there. Probably
really?
There's probably a little bit. People probably be surprised over how clean. I don't know if they're clean, but like how dirty the racing in real life is.
Okay.
You know, people bitch and moan a little bit on iRacing about moves and stuff like that sticking up there. So I think the problem is these stuff happens a lot in real life racing as well. There's a lot of like brake testing going on and stuff like that, which, you know, you will always bitch a little bit on iRacing on, but this is quite common. This stuff happens on, you know, in real life, even like lining up, doing formation laps. There's a lot of dirty moves out there.
Okay.
But I think also because people is on a very high level, you don't see the same kind of contact where maybe on iRacing you might have a new guy who's not used to this, and that's why you get the connection, colliding.
Yes.
Not saying it's always dirty, but
No.
I think when I see, like, people say, "Oh, this doesn't happen in real life," blah 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 blah. I think a lot of people would be surprised how dirty the real life racing is at times.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, so it sounds like it's kind of a similar mind, and maybe for different reasons, but similar outcome, I guess, that the moves you see online are not quite as aggressive sometimes as what you see in real life, by the sounds of it.
You get both, as I said, but it's going to come down to people who. If you ask any racing driver in real life, I would say 9 out of 10, if not more, is going to say they're the best in the world. It's a sport. It's a sport with a massive ego, and nobody want to give in. As I said, everybody gives 110%. Everybody thinks they're the best, so nobody's moving on. Everything counts out there, really, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, it sounded almost counterintuitive. In so much as there's not a great deal of risk associated with driving a virtual car up the inside of turn one at any given track. You might lose some iRating and safety rating and exchange some words, but there's another race just around the corner. But it sounds like it does go on, right?
Yeah, but I also think that's why sometimes there is a collision. Is like it's easy just if you have hit somebody, and if the guy does a dirty move in front of you, you just drive into him because you can just quit and start the next one. Yeah, you might lose a bit of iRacing. Yeah. Where in real life, these moves might happen, but you're a lot more aware of them because you are playing with $1 million car and your health. So it's but as I said, it all depends who you're out there with.
Yeah, of course it does. And that's the same in iRacing as well, right? Because a lot of the time you race with the same guys week in, week out. You learn to know how they drive and who you can trust and who you're better off just letting go at times. So, yeah, it's interesting. Do you find you race the same guys a lot? Obviously, if you're racing series, you do. But do you get to know the drivers around you pretty well?
I think so. I mean, as I said, I kind of got hooked on the Skippy, so I've been playing the Skippy for quite a while now. So, yeah, I think I kind of got a good idea of who to race in the Skippy and how they race, and I think also the guys around me know how I race and so on. So sometimes it turns out to some good racing, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, that's right. So when it comes to hopping into a car on the virtual track, I've always been pretty fascinated to know what sort of mindset someone like you who's had the extensive race experience brings to the table when you race. Are you looking to practice things in these races? Is it a relaxation thing? Is there some on-the-job training benefits? Or is it a mix of all? What's going through your mind when you're doing these things?
I mean, the whole reason why. I think one thing is having fun. Having a good battle on iRacing just makes me laugh and have a good grin, which is probably why I end up driving the Skippy because there's always a good racing happening there.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's still practice, of course. As I said, it's the concentration. We do the 24-hour races. You can be in the car for 3-4 hours at times. I think when we did the Spa 24, I was in the car for nearly 12 hours out of the 24. So it's, there's a lot of concentration in there. So as I said earlier, there's also that, hitting the apex constantly, lap after lap, hitting that brake marker, get it turned in at that point, you want to have every lap sat within a couple of tenths all the time. So, it's perfect for training that way. But, I enjoy playing the simulator and enjoy having the battles in the races. If it's Monday night or it's the 2K or an official race, it's all good fun. So
I was going to say, do you approach those races a little differently when there's, it might be a 2K Cup or something like that where you've got some of the best online drivers of the Skippies around. Do you approach those a little differently?
No. As I said earlier, I'm very competitive, so I approach everything to win it. Sure. So, it's just, I don't have any game plan before going down. You kind of, as you said, you learn a little bit about how the other guys drive, but game plan every time is to win.
Yeah, absolutely. We did a couple of good wins last week that I saw, as we saw in the Monday Lights and the other soft race. So that was a good week, I thought. But One thing I was thinking, I'm usually in a different part of or a different end of the field to you in the races we've been in. So I don't necessarily have the experience of driving with the big boys in the iRacing scene. So without getting yourself into any trouble, right, how do you think the standard of driving compares in say the skippies with some of the guys you've seen on the tracks around the world?
I think there's some very, very fast drivers in the skippy.
Yeah.
Some really, really quick guys out there. The racing is very clean in the skippy, I think, especially like when you're racing the 2K or, I mean, there's obviously one occasionally something happens, but overall, I think there's a fairly decent respect for each other. I mean, especially with the 2K, it's got a very hard penalty system anyway, so. Yeah, I mean, there's still respect on the real life as well, but as I said, the level of blocking and moves that's happening is probably a bit harsher in real life. I mean, if anybody, I think it's the Nürburgring 2016 last lap, people can kind of look that up and see what kind of level that goes into launching and defending on a last lap in real life racing. Because I think people get quite shocked if they watch what's happened there compared to the skippy. But
I'll have to go have a look at that. I haven't seen that one.
Yeah.
That sounds like it could be a decent watch.
Yeah, no, it's a quite interesting. But it comes down to you want to win in the end, and nobody remembers second place in real life, so doesn't look that good in the CV.
No, that's right. And the people themselves, how do they compare? I mean, I imagine the racing community in the real world's relatively tight-knit, whilst always competitive, of course. I mean, I've connected with some great people through iRacing. How do you find the community elements of it? Yeah,
very good. I mean, there's people I chat to on Facebook. I never met them before, and through iRacing. I met Johnny Quindy, who was with you last time. So Johnny, who listened last time, I know Johnny won the GT Academy, which I worked on as an instructor / coach for a little bit.
Awesome.
So I actually helped Johnny on one of his earlier stages through the thing. So I've worked on like GT Academy for a few years now. It's super impressive to see these guys who's never raced a real car comes off the simulator, and the level they come in at is incredibly high. Really, really impressive the way they are straight out the box, and that I think that kind of just shows what kind of level of racing there is happening in iRacing. For to see where they start is very impressive.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty cool story, and I've said it. I've said it before. You had 1 minute he's in his local shopping centre having a drive on a simulator. The next he's doing what he did on that big stage. So that was really impressive, I thought too. So. One thing I do think about though is in the online world, through the relative protection and anonymity of distance, and people can be pretty forthcoming with their opinions and fire up pretty quickly, and when the red mist descends, so to speak, during online races. What's it like when you compare that to the real thing? Are people just people, no matter what the circumstances, or does the protection of the internet, you reckon, make people braver in the online sense?
There's no doubt that the internet makes people a lot braver. There's obviously some messaging throwing around sometimes on the online. Online. I don't think it's just iRacing. I think it's generally just social media. Other people are a lot braver when they're behind the screens.
Yeah.
Do
you get it online? Do you ever get shirt fronted by people after a race that are a bit upset with what's going on, or is that just
occasionally? We can't all agree on the same line sometimes, but no, it's of course it's you do get that stuff once in a while, but it's the same in real life. It's probably just braver what's being said online than there does in real life. But I think it's really a shame when you watch motor racing. I mean, Formula One does it a little bit with the top three, but I think it's a very shame they never show the what we call parc fermé, because there's some interesting conversation going on between drivers. When you finish the race and park your cars up, there's definitely some words being shouted, but it's not like, I think there's quite respect of drivers that nobody goes and say anything to what we call it, the race stewards. It's just kind of respect attitude. You might shout a little bit and use a few verbal words towards each other, but it's all good at the next meeting most of the times.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Now, one thing one of my listeners suggested that I ask everyone that comes on the show about is what's your home iRacing setup like? Do you run a full cockpit, or are you a bolt the wheel to the desk kind of guy?
I started with a G25 just attached to the wheel.
Yeah.
But over the years, it's growing as the interest gets into it bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So I got a rig now. Got 3. Just got introduced to the 3 screens like within the last couple of months.
Nice.
I use a Fanatec V2 base, and then I'm lucky enough to be sponsored by Hoskin Field Engineering lately. So I've got a nice set of their pedals now.
Yeah, I hear they're awesome.
They are awesome. So they I think they definitely earned me another 2-3 tenths lately. So
nice.
Yeah, it's growing every couple of months, I say, the setup.
So everyone talks about the brake pedal being so important in sim racing. What does that feel like to you? Like, do you think that holds true? I mean, how do you get the same sort of feel in the brake pedal as in the real car, and is it that important?
It's very important. I think it's one of the key ingredients. I think it's not like 100% the same in real life, because you don't have the same feel through the car, of course, but it's still the same thing as, it's still one of the main ingredients in real life as well. Because I always, when I do the coaching in real life, for those that doesn't know, I do some real life coaching as well for other drivers.
Yeah.
It always comes down to the weight balance of the car. You can rotate the car purely on the weight balance of the car. So obviously, and the weight of the car is all determined of your inputs, mainly the brake pedal.
Yeah.
It's one of the most key ingredients, if not the most important one, really.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Now, speaking of your setup, I'm going to ask you to hook it up and take a couple of laps around Okayama for our hot lap challenge. So while we're getting all set up, I'll get you to hook that up and we'll spin a few laps. All right, folks, we've made our way out to the great Okayama track. Benny Simonsen making his way out on his warm-up lap. Now, we were saying before, haven't done a lot of laps around here, Benny.
No. I know my way around, but it's been a while here. I don't think I've ever driven the skipper here.
No, it's a good combination, I've found. A lot of fun to get in and about. I reckon it's got a good combination. I mean, the straight isn't the longest thing in the world. You might just crack it for fifth gear. Well, you should by the end of it. You don't get much of a run in fifth gear, but the curves out the back, I think, are quite technical. So it's a good bit of fun, All
yeah,
right.
I remember playing it in MX5 and it was quite good fun.
Yeah, that's it. So in and around that technical back section now, series of hairpin-like corners, nice through there, every bit of the circuit. That's what we like to see, Benny. It's something I'm not very good at, I have to say. Out the back now, that's great. All right, coming out to complete the warm-up lap now, of course. Going to the creatively named final corner. We'll hop on the gyro here. Sorry. And chuck ourselves up maybe a speedo here. There we go. Second gear through turn 1. All the way out there, good. Sets up nicely for turn 2.
Ooh.
Bit of corrective, that's all right.
Bit early.
Nice run down the hill. Probably the most, I don't know, you might tell me, this would be one of the most, if not the most important corner on the track, setting yourself up for the longest straight. All the way out. It's interesting, some guys will take the narrow exit there, taking the classic line to track out there.
I have no idea what's fastest at the moment.
That's all right. Very good. Turn 1, hairpin at the end there. Excellent. Coming down now. Oh. That's all right. We've got another one to get it absolutely right. Still using the full extent of the track, which is good to see. Oh, 1x there, I think. We might have just nullified that one.
Do they count?
No, we got it with no 1x's. Oh. That's all right. You got to set up for the next one. That's all right. It's okay. Out the back here, very good. All right, this is the one that counts. We're going to get a good one here. The time you're looking to beat, let me just pull it up here, is Johnny Gindy. Oh, can the apprentice outdo the master here? You're chasing a 144 dead, pretty much. 144.072. So opening lap with an incident. Let me just see if I can't pull that up. That's all right. Keep going. Let's see if I can pull up that last lap time. Yeah, a 144.1. So you're on pace. Very much
6 of 1 was awful.
That's okay. There's still time. Coming down into the turn 4 hairpin here. Nice. Tight line this time. Then it track out again. Good. You're clutch shifting there, I can hear?
I lift and upshift.
Yeah, I do that too. In the 5th there. Nice laid on the brakes there. Tight line through the apex. Beautiful. Sets up the next corner here. Bit tighter line this time. Nice. Nice rotation in the car there. That's alright, that's alright. We've still got it. Nice on the exit there. Lovely. Turn in here. Little lift to get the car around. Very good. All late on the pull up there. Lovely rotation there through the last corner there. On the run down. What are we looking at here? Can he outdo the apprentice?
Oh!
Crosses the line. What do we got? 144, 1, 2, 3. Well, you must have trained Johnny pretty well there, mate, because he's just pipped you. Just pipped you. Mind you, I think he might have had a bit more practice here, to be fair. So I've got to tell you, that's a pretty great time considering.
I'll take that. It was a bit messy in Sector 1.
Nah, that was great. Well done. That's a lot of fun at the same time, you know. Well,
that was quite funny.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was well done. I'm pleased to see. I'm actually more so than pleased. I'm really impressed to see that you were able to pull off such a good time, having had such little experience here. That's really cool. Just goes to show all those laps on real tracks weren't wasted, mate.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever driven a Skippy here. I've driven MX-5 years ago, but I remember getting onto iRacing when you get out of the rookie license. I had to play Okayama and Lime Rock and Laguna quite a lot.
Yes.
So obviously you turned quite a few laps back then, but
oh, dude,
yeah.
That's heartbreaking for someone like me who's done so many laps in the Skippy here and other places. I can't do that probably at all, let alone on no practice. So that's bloody impressive.
No, it's good fun. I like shootouts. I've always been a massive fan of 1 lap and 2 lap shootouts. So I like when the pressure's fully on.
Nice. No, that's cool. So I just wanted to sort of wrap things up by saying thank you, Benny, for taking the time. I really do appreciate the insights. I was sort of looking into you and your background in preparation for this. I was really interested to talk to you and hear your thoughts on a bunch of stuff. So thank you for that. But before I let you go, do you have any upcoming races where people can follow your on-track action?
Yeah, we've got Barcelona 24 hours coming up in last weekend of August. Nice. I think it's the 28, 29, 26, 27, 28. I'm not sure, but it's the last weekend in August.
Yeah.
And then we got the Spa 12 hour, which is in, good question, October, I think.
Yeah.
And I think also there's a 24 hour at Kota, which is the next three, but I can't actually remember the dates of that one. But it's somewhere September, October as well.
Nice.
So the next three.
Sorry, I was going to say, tell me about Coda. Like, I read an article where it was, a bit of a, I don't know, a jigsaw puzzle of bits and pieces thrown together. What's it like to drive there?
It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's. I got to drive in the World Endurance, which for me is, the biggest thing outside F1.
Yeah.
So that was on the scene with the big boys over there. I think Webber was in it at that point, and
nice.
That was an amazing experience. But the track itself it's awesome. It's actually quite a hard track. There's Sector 1, which is like a Semessis. They're quite tricky, but yeah, it's a modern F1 track. Facilities, the whole thing is very, very incredible cool there. Austin as a area is a really cool place as well. So I think when we did it, it was driving into the night as well, which was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, nice one. Well, hearing you say it's difficult makes me feel a bit better, actually, because I found it pretty hard to do at iRacing too. So
yeah, it is a tricky track. Always these tracks that's very wide. I always find, especially when you drive on iRacing and something like the Skip, because there's so many different lines on a wide track.
Yeah.
When you drive a little narrow car, but it is one of the tracks that's fairly hard to learn, I'll say.
Yeah.
I think it's generally for most drivers Thursday that weekend, where you get, other tracks like Donington or Phillip Island, for example, you can, pretty straightforward in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, that's it. No, and in the meantime, though, how can people keep up with what's going on in the world of Benny Simonsen's racing? You got the social media and stuff going, of course.
Yeah, I'm probably most active with Instagram, to be fair.
Yeah.
So obviously got my Instagram. I think all my usernames is Benny Simonsen 22.
Yeah.
I use Twitter, Facebook, which is the same. Benny Simonsen 22. But yeah, Instagram and Facebook is probably the two where I'm the most active. I must say I'm not the best to update on Twitter, really.
Yeah, you and me both.
But it's one of these things. You do have it, but always feel welcome to drop a message, or if anybody's on the track, everybody's always welcome to come to the garage if I'm racing and say hi and give them a tour of the garage if they want.
Oh, that's awesome, mate. If only, maybe next time you're down here, I'll have to make that trip. That sounds like an amazing offer, but that's good. And I'll put all those social media links up in the description of the podcast, mate. But
thank you.
Thank you so much for making time to speak with me here today, Benny. It's been a great pleasure.
Oh, you're welcome.
No, it's been awesome.
You're welcome. Mate. It's been fun to have.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Benny. So there you have it, folks. That was my chat with Benny Simonsen. And what an interesting one it was. As you may have guessed, we tried for quite some time to do this. And during that time, whilst I was always keen to catch up with Benny and talk about some of the things we covered today, I also invited a few other real-life professionals onto the show. And not only did none of them accept my invitation, I never even had any responses to those invitations. Now, I know I'm just a guy in my study talking about his sim racing hobby, So I can appreciate that it's not the most appealing of invitations when it comes through. So in the face of that, I genuinely appreciate Benny taking the time to speak with me. He was really gracious throughout our back and forth of messages in the lead up, and I thought he was really open and honest in what we spoke about too. Whilst I was very pleased to have some of my online versus real racing comparison questions answered, in this episode once again I found myself learning things that I never really quite expected. In fact, when I went back and listened over our conversation again during the editing process, I found myself more often than not caught up in listening to what Benny was saying through the ears of an audience to the conversation rather than a participant. From that perspective again, I'm really pleased with how it went and grateful for how open Benny was with everything. It's these sort of experiences that I really hope to achieve with the podcast, and along with his time, I'm also very grateful for Benny giving us the benefits of his experiences and insights into the world of professional motorsport. So thank you once again, Mr. Benny Simonsen. Before I go, I wanted to take a quick moment to give a shout out to the Top Split community. In amongst the limited social media that I put out, we also have a great little Discord server with more and more folks joining us and sharing our online racing together. It's really a lot of fun. Since having Matt Malone and Tyson Meyer on the show, I've also started streaming my races a lot more over at the Top Split TV Twitch channel. It's a lot of fun to be a part of that, and I get real pleasure from seeing some of the regulars pop up in the chat box while I'm racing. It really adds to the enjoyment of the racing too. On the subject of my Twitch channel, I wanted to thank a few people for their support. I have some regulars from the Top Split Discord server who, when racing with me, will hop in the live stream voice channel, and we have a good time while we're racing, but I think it really adds a lot to the stream, so a big shout out to those guys. To the regulars in chat also, I really do appreciate you joining in and interacting. On top of all that, those of you who are into the Twitch streaming world will know that, you'll know what I mean when I say I recently became a Twitch affiliate. That's a program run by the Twitch site to engage and help smaller streamers like me to get going. Part of that is enabling a subscriber option to the channel. It's not something that I've necessarily promoted, as for the most part I feel like when I stream I'm basically gaming with a bunch of mates. And having said that though, I was quite humbled that a few people chose to subscribe to my channel in the short time since the option became available. It might seem like something really quite small in that it's about the cost of a cup of coffee, but that small vote of confidence and support really means a lot to me, and I'm really very grateful. So to Dennis, Jared, Richard and Louis, my first ever Twitch subscribers, I say a big thank you. And I hope you enjoy the new bearded emote that I put up this week. It's a bit of fun. And I've certainly been enjoying the streaming, and also, again, I'm very grateful for your support. In closing up for this month, thanks once again to Benny Simonsen for joining me here at the Top Split. Thanks also to you, the listeners, who take your time out to listen to the show. I hope you get as much out of it as I do bringing it to you. If you are interested in keeping up with the goings-on in the Top Split world, by all means, head over to thetopsplit.com, where you'll find all the happenings along with links to join us on the Top Split Discord server, where there's always plenty going on. Also links there to the Top Split Facebook page and YouTube channel, where I post videos of my races and broadcasts that I do here and there. Speaking of broadcasts, you can catch me each week of the regular iRacing season in the commentary booth alongside my partner in crime, Bernie Weemers, where we call the Australia-New Zealand Strength of Field race, aptly named Monday Night Lights. Head on over to the RRTV YouTube channel and check out the action each week. I can really recommend watching the Interlagos round from last week. My guest today, Benny Simonsen, was involved in an epic four-way battle for the race win, and the racing throughout the field was amazing. Certainly, I can't think of a better race that I've had the pleasure of calling. 4 wide into turn 1 for the lead is not something you see every day. Also, make sure you check out the link to the Top Split TV Twitch channel that I mentioned before. I'm on there a few nights a week trying to rub shoulders on track with the great Skippy community and having a good time with the folks who join me on the stream. You can find the link to the Twitch channel either at thetopsplit.com or just search for Top Split TV on Twitch. Thank you once again for joining me for another month. I've been your host, Alex McKellar, and you've been listening to The Top Split. Until next time, I'll say ciao for now.